Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H virtual event space. You were tuned in to how to organize your images with photographer Russell Graves. Russell, welcome back to the program.
Hey, glad to be here.
Great to have you back. We enjoyed having you on our first time, so I'd say you're not a rookie anymore. We're going to move you in one more of these, and you're going to be veteran status.
Well, that's good to hear. I always enjoy doing these.
Now, we love your passion for photography and education. Today, you're going to be diving into a topic that not a lot of people want to discuss because it's like cleaning your house, your
It is.
apartment, the
It is.
basement, the garage. It's like you don't want to start it. And then you put it off and you put it off and it just gets worse.
It's so important though. It is, and I'll explain more as we go through the webinar. But this may be one of the most important topics in photography. More important than megapixels. More important than frame rate. More important than autofocus lenses or in-body stabilization. Because we got all these modern cameras. You got all these cool pictures. What do you do with them?
Exactly.
How do you find them later?
Exactly. Well, I'm going to leave you to do what you do best. I'm going to do what I do
Okay.
best. Camera off. I'll see you in a little bit for
All
some
right.
Q&A.
Thanks, sir. All right, let me switch this over. Welcome, everybody. Glad that you're here with me today. I don't know which way you're watching, whether it's through YouTube, Vimeo, or through the stream on Zoom, but I'm glad everybody's here. And thanks for sharing this time with me and to talk about something I think is a really important aspect of photography. And by the way, before I get too far into it, my name is Russell Graves. I'm coming to you live from Hackberry Farm, not in Dodge City, Texas, but near Dodge City, Texas. Dodge City is my mailing address, but I'm coming to you from out in the country, and it's a beautiful day here, and I look forward to sharing this with you. You know, really for me, management strategies, this whole concept that I'll be talking with you today started for me a long time ago. Before we began this webinar, we were talking behind the scenes, and I was mentioning about buying film. I'm a longtime B&H customer. I've been a B&H customer since the 90s when I got my first cameras. But back then, we are all shooting film. And back when I started building a substantial film library or substantial slide library, I just knew it was important for me to be able to find specific photos. I had to have some kind of good organizational strategy. And so I had a pretty good organizational strategy. If this was 30 years ago behind me, you'd have seen a giant lateral file cabinet. In that file cabinet, I could have found almost any slide I had because every slide had a place, every slide had a name. It was easy to go through and find them. And so eventually, as I came to start to make the switch over to digital, one of the things I drug my feet on was not whether or not digital was better than film, because back when I switched in 2004, 2005, something like that, it was already proven that digital was going to be the medium of the future, and the quality of the images back then were really, really good. So it wasn't a matter of if I was going to switch to digital, it was a matter of when. But the thing I drug my feet on the most was I knew that once I started taking digital photographs, and look, let's face it, when you're shooting pictures on a memory card, it's literally like you're playing the slot machines on the casino's money. It doesn't cost you much at all to play. You can take plenty of pictures. So I knew that for the first time in my life, I wouldn't have a regard for how many pictures I was taking. I was just going to take lots of pictures, because with film, every time I took a picture, it's like hearing a cash register going off. You'd take a picture, cost money. Back in the day, for every roll of film and processing that I had, it cost about $12 a roll for 36 pictures. Well, all of a sudden you get this digital memory cards, and it really doesn't cost anything at all, or doesn't cost much to take pictures. So I knew I'd be piling up the images. And so what was important to me, because I do travel a little bit, and my wife, she'll help me out. I needed to develop a strategy to be able to find those images and find them quick. And so the things I'm going to talk to you about today, and the way I do it, is this is the way I designed, almost 20 years ago, on how to manage my images. It's had a few tweaks along the way, but nothing has really changed, because early on I found a system that was simple. I found something that worked, and I found something I stuck with over and over again. Hey, one more thing I always tell people. I know I talk with a Texas accent, so if I say things you don't understand what I'm saying, just feel free to chime in the chat. feel free to ask questions as we go along, and I'll make sure I get to your Q&A as we go through here. So the way this is going to work today is I'm gonna show you through my presentation some of the strategies I use, and then we're going to show you where the rubber meets the road. I'm going to switch over to Lightroom and a couple other tools I use to help me accomplish what I'm going to talk about today. So if you'll stay with me, there'll be a couple of times when I've got to switch everything over, but if you'll stay with me, I think it'll all be worth its while. Again, if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to type them into the chat box, and I'll be glad to help. So, for every solution, you got to have a problem. And what's the problem? You've got images everywhere. Like Derek said as we started, this is probably like cleaning your house. It's something you got to do, and if you really care about finding your images later on. But I think everyone needs a system on how to start. And so today, again, I'm going to give you the framework of how to organize your images, and in a simple, really not a complex way that you can remember how to do it over and over again. And hopefully it'll inspire you to go back and try to tackle your mountain of images. The problem is you've got images everywhere. What's the solution? You got to develop a workflow. And so in this webinar, I'm going to talk about a bunch of things. I'm going to talk about my workflow. Now, when I say my workflow, this isn't necessarily groundbreaking stuff. It's not necessarily unique, and it may not be the very best way of doing it, but it's my way of doing it, and it works pretty well for me, because the key thing it allows me to do is just, excuse me, remember this workflow all the time and just make it repeatable. So I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Every time I get images in, I go through the same 6 steps I'll talk about. And I think once I'm done with these 6 steps, it'll make a lot of sense. Specific steps that I use to manage my images. Again, not complicated. I'm not a complicated guy. I love simple solutions, and I love simple common sense solutions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then I'll talk about the specific tools I use to manage my image. And notice I said tools in parentheses, because there's a couple of, I use Lightroom. I use a couple other software solutions that really help me out, but they don't make the process complicated. And then in the end, like I mentioned before, I'm going to show you how the whole process works in the end and how I do things. And so what's the key to managing your digital collection? It's really 2 words, and this is efficiency and consistency. One of the things I think about all the time in my workflow is, how can I make it more efficient? And in other words, how can I make it take less time? Because the truth is, if something becomes daunting, and I'm the world's worst at it, if it's very hard at all, I'll put it off and put it off and put it off till I don't do it at all. And that's the thing I hear from a lot of people. I've given this talk a lot. I've taught this stuff to a lot of people. I've had casual conversations with photographers who say, it's just, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. And so I just don't do it at all. And so one of the things you're going to notice in this presentation I'll bring you today is how just efficient the system is. And it makes it pretty easy. And I'm always looking for ways to make the whole process more and more efficient. And the reason why, and I'll get back to this in a minute, because I'm going to get my calculator on my phone fired up, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of information. But it's got to be efficient. It's got to be able to get through the whole process quick. And then the main thing is, it's got to be consistent. You got to do the same thing over and over and over again. And really, whether you're in software development, or whether you're in some kind of manufacturing, or whether you're involved in any kind of business that requires a process, the consistent thing is the key. You've got to be able to just continually replicate that same system over and over again. And so the consistency part comes where the workflow is pretty simple. And so before I go any further, the efficiency part, this is what I was going to show you. I take about 100,000 images a year. I take a lot of pictures. If I take about $100,000 a year, for the sake of efficiency, if I can figure out how to save 4 seconds per image, it's probably a little more than that actually, but if I can figure out how to save 4 seconds per image, that's 400,000 seconds. Now that number doesn't mean much to me at all, but if I drill that down to how many minutes and how many hours that is, 4 seconds per image ends up being 111 hours per year I can save by just thinking efficiently. And so some of the tools I'm going to use with you today do just that. I may have to skip around a little bit and use software A before I end up using software B, but the whole thing is based around how can I be efficient, not only efficient in ingesting these images when you get them into the computer or on your computer, but also efficiency on the back end when it comes to really looking for a needle in a haystack and how you do that a lot quicker. And so I'll give you a preview of the equipment I use. It's nothing exotic. I've got a 27-inch iMac. That's what I'm bringing to you today. I've got a Synology network attached storage drive that I primarily use to archive my pictures. That's actually going to change soon. I'm not a big fan of those because of my lack of technical skills. I found that the Synology network attached storage drive to be a little bit tougher than I wanted to be to set up. So I'm going to go with the direct attached storage, so it really looks like I'm just plugging in a big hard drive. And then I've got the online storage system, which is my backup. It's the typical 3-2-1 backup you hear everyone talking about. 3 backups in 2 locations on 2 mediums, 1 offsite. And so that's what I still practice that system as well. I use Lightroom Classic as my primary way I manage my images. And then I use Photo Mechanic as the secondary way of managing my images. And we'll get into those as we go. And so my workflow is a 6-step process. And I'll go through these steps individually right now, but I'm going to go drill down each one of them as I go through this presentation. Again, if you have any specific questions for me as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll answer those in detail towards the end of the presentation. So the first step is I download the images. The second step I take is a quality edit. Again, I'll explain these more in detail as I go along the presentation. The third step is I rename the images, and you may be thinking, why is that? And I'll tell you a couple of good reasons I think in a minute. The fourth step is I apply color labels to everything. The fifth step, I keyword the images, and then the final step I do is the final filing of these images. And I'll show you my strategies of what I do to file them and how I file them and what my thinking is behind all of it to hopefully it'll make sense to you. And so let's go to each one. So step 1 is download. You know, we go out into the field, we take a bunch of pictures, we get them back to the computer, and the first step is I download the images. And then the one thing I do, and this is one of those things that this is the way I started doing a long time ago, and I've never deviated from this because it's just a simple step I can take, and it helps me sort of launch the whole process from here. But all the pictures I take get downloaded into one central folder on my desktop. I've got a folder on my desktop I'm looking at right now. It's called New Pictures. And so whenever I get in, I can either just drag and drop, open up my card in my Finder window on Mac, and then, or I think it's Explorer window on PC, and then just drag all those images into the folder. Just a simple file copy is all I do. And I start with them there because I look at it in the sense of it's almost like a retail store. If you're thinking about Walmart or thinking about Target or any retail store, they may have a big warehouse in the back, and so those trucks are bringing all that merchandise into the warehouse, and it all gets loaded into that central warehouse. Well, after it gets loaded into the central warehouse, then people start processing each step of it and then get it out onto the shelves. And so one of the big reasons that I've developed these fast workflows is really it's almost like a retail model in the sense that for me, because my business historically has been structured as a business to business enterprise, you know, I work with editorial clients and commercial clients, and it doesn't do me any good for pictures to stay back in the warehouse. You know, any kind of retail store will tell you, like Target, in order for them to make money, they've got to get the product out on the shelves. And so this is what I'm doing. So everything comes into the warehouse, and I'm going to process them each step of the way to get those things out on the shelves so I can monetize them and make money to keep my business afloat. So all the pictures get downloaded into a central folder on my desktop first. That's a pretty straightforward act to do. And so step 2 comes the quality edit. And so really the quality edit's pretty simple. I do 2 passes on my edit. Number 1 is I go through the first pass and I delete images based on quality factors, like, is it in focus, acceptably in focus? I mean, can I get by with that picture? Because sometimes, whether it's just we've all done it. If you take pictures enough, you know, you just take a bad picture from time to time. So I look for those bad pictures, and then I also look for pictures that don't have the proper exposure, something that I just can't fix. And like someone told me a long time ago, don't fall in love with something that won't love you back, and a bad picture will never love you back. And so once I identify those bad pictures, I delete them from that folder. Just get rid of them for good. And I'm done with them. And I don't delete them on the back of my camera because I really want to take a good look at everything on my computer screen. And that way I can make a better assessment if there's a good image or a bad image. And the software program I use for that is Photo Mechanic. And the reason why I use that is because I think Photo Mechanic, because it was designed this way. And look, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, just full disclosure. So I don't have any reason to tout one product over another. I just found these products to be helpful in my workflow and wanted to pass those on to you. But Photo Mechanic is so much faster at just that initial process of going through the images quick and looking at them, doing a quick pass through them. You know, if you've taken enough pictures and in your photography, you train your eye where you can spot a bad picture in a split second. And so by using Photo Mechanic, you almost can't outrun. I know I'll show you later on in the demonstration. You almost cannot outrun as fast as I can push the right arrow key on my computer. Photo Mechanic will render the next image. I've noticed with Lightroom and the way my computer's set up, it'll get to the point where it'll slow down after a while. And so I can't go nearly as fast. And so in the interest of just making things efficient and saving time, Photo Mechanic was a modest investment for me to be able to go through the images a lot quicker on this first pass. Now, I will say that there are some other alternatives, but I've used Photo Mechanic for a few years now and it works well for me. I've just really seen no reason to change. And so the second pass I do is where I pick the images that I'll eventually edit and place on my website or deliver to clients. Now, or put on social media or whatever. And so what I mean by that is, like I'll show you some examples in a minute where, I was in Yellowstone about a month ago. I may have took 200 pictures of the same bison standing the same way. And I do that a lot of times just for insurance, in case an eye blinks or in case his tail swishes in a different way. I just shoot a lot of pictures. I'm there to take pictures, so I shoot a lot. And so that second pass, I may not pick out every single image to edit in the end. I'll just pick out the few that I'm going to show to someone or pass on to a client or put on my website. And so the second pass I make is when I'll ingest those pictures from that folder into my Lightroom catalog, and then I'll start making the picks based on the pictures I'm going to actually do something with. And then step 3 is where I'll rename the pictures. Now, a lot of people ask me questions. This is one of the common questions I get when I teach this, but I rename all of my images. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One's an antiquated reason, but I still do it because it's a system I used a long time ago. And that is, in the early days of doing editorial photography for magazines, I would more often than not, 2 or 3 times a month, maybe more than that, get an email from a photo editor. And the photo editor would say, they'd send a picture out and they'd say like, oh, we don't know who took this picture. Can anyone claim it? And so even though I would embed my metadata information in the picture, I didn't assume that everyone that I dealt with knew how to read the metadata. And so one of the practices that I came up with is just I started putting my last name in renaming all my images with my last name as the prefix to the image number. And so an example I'll show you is like that. So every one of my images get a name, Graves, which is my last name, dash, and then some sort of numeric, some sort of number after that. And if you wanted to get really fancy, and I don't do this, you could do an alphanumeric number where all the letters and the numbers meant something, like the year it was taken, or a letter like a MA for a mammal, and then you could, there's a billion different ways you could do it. I've never really gotten that complicated. I just keep mine pretty simple and name it Graves dash whatever. Really, for so that's a pretty proprietary reason for doing that. I think today with the clients I use, they all know how to read the metadata, and so I really don't have to put my last name in the file name of the picture anymore. But I still do that because it's like every other image that I've got is named. And by the way, I've got almost 1 million images in my on files that I manage. But really, what I've noticed, the best reason. Now, this may be a Canon specific issue, and if anyone has a workaround on this, I'd love to know it, because I've looked and I can't figure out how to do it. But Canon And it may be the same way with Nikon and Sony and Olympus. I don't know that, but I know with Canon, you can change the prefix of the file number, but the last images, the last numbers, once they get to 10,000, it just recycles the number over and over again. So one of the key reasons I think you should rename your images is so you don't inadvertently duplicate file names over time and give each one their own unique file name, because it would stand to reason, and you'll see what I'm talking about later, that if you end up, I've got a lot of pictures of white-tailed deer, for example. It stands to reason because these numbers top out at 10,000 before they start over again on my Canon cameras. It stands to reason that if you shoot pictures long enough, you're going to start getting the same image number over and over and over again. And so when I download my pictures and get them into Lightroom, it's a batch operation. And I'll show you this here in a minute. You can select all the images at once and then just do a batch operation and change the file name. But that's one of the things I always do in my workflow is change the file name. And then step 4, I color label. And this is an important one too. And I'll give you a good reason why. I use color labels instead of stars. And the reason why is, and I'll show you that in a minute, is when I put stars on pictures, when I'm scrolling through pictures really quick, the stars don't show up as good as what the color labels do. Now I do add stars at some point, but I don't initially. I use color labels instead of stars. And again, just because I can see them a lot quicker than I can see the stars when I'm just making a quick reference to where I'm at. And then the second reason, and maybe the main reason I use color labels, is as these pictures go through the process, is they go from being my pics, they get a color, and then from pics, when I do my color correction to my edits, then when the state changes on the image, I give them another color. And then when they get keyworded, I give them another color. When they get output to JPEGs, I give them another color. And then when they when they go to their final resting place where they're going to be filed, I turn it to that final color. So every image goes through this progression: red to yellow to green to blue, and eventually purple in the end. And the reason why I do that part is because if like I went to Botswana and Rwanda back in June and July. I shot 40,000 pictures. There's no way I was going to be able to get through 40,000 pictures in one night. And so what using these color labels allows me to do is I go through the progression. If I need to quit one night or one day and come back to it the next day, I can quickly go back and see where I left off just based on the color labels of the images. So in other words, the red, once I've picked all my pictures that I'm going to do my edits on, and the ones that are going to go to clients or the ones that I'm just going to pick, my top picks, they all get labeled red. On Lightroom, it's the shortcut key is number 6. And then once I picked them, and then the next step after that is I'll go through and do all my color correction, do my my edits to the pictures, crop, do whatever I'm going to do. And once that part's finished, and I've done my edits to those pictures, those initial pics, they get changed from a red color, then they become a yellow. And so again, if I go back 2 weeks from now, I can go back and look at my color codes, and I know if they're red, they haven't been edited yet. If I know if they're yellow, then they've been edited, so they're ready to go to the next step. And those color codes, I mean, you can dig into it and see if they've been edited, but that gives me a real quick reference on where I need to start back from. And so when I get to a green, that means the keywords have been applied. And so I don't have to go back and look for those little icons in the pictures. I can just do a real quick reference and know where the pictures are that I haven't applied keywords to, or ones that I've applied keywords to. And you can use that again when I get to the demonstration. I'll show you some of this. You can use these keywords and be able to filter out your images using the tools in Lightroom to be able to look and see where we're at in the process. And then once I get to blue, JPEGs or whatever other format I've made. I don't really make TIFFs that much anymore, but really it's primarily JPEGs. So once I've made the JPEGs of those images, they get changed to blue. And then that way I know that, if I'm wondering 3 days from now, well, did I ever output these images for my social media feeds? I can look at the blue ones and know, yeah, I did. So that's all taken care of. And then in the end, once I go to put them in their final place where I'll be able to find them later, the state changes, gets to purple. And so again, that's just 6, 7, 8, and 9 will change it from red to yellow to green to blue. Now with Lightroom and purple, you've got to go into the menu and be able to change that. But once I get to purple, it allows me in the end, when I'm looking through this gigantic mountain of images, I can just sort for the purple images, and I know those are my top picks that I've used in the past. Just helps me find these images a lot quicker. And then step 5 is I keyword the images. Again, this whole process is designed, step 1 was we download the images. We've got this big haystack. And then so to be able to find the needle in the haystack, we're drilling down with each step. So step 1 is we've download the images. Step 2 is where I make my picks. I get rid of the bad ones and then identify the good ones and then decide which ones I'm going to edit. Step 3 is I went blank on this, but step 3 I believe was the Step 3 was the rename the images. There we go. Step 4 was to start color coding everything as I go through the process. And then step 5 is keywording. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking this gigantic haystack with this one needle I may try to find, and I'm building in these processes to really create a smaller and smaller haystack that I'll be able to use the tools I have to find these images later. And so a big way I do that is with keywording. Now, keywording can be a daunting task. One of the things I really used to do a lot of, I'm not a pro at it, but I used to log the keywords that people would search my website and understand how people were searching those images. And that helped me develop my keyword set. So what it told me is people don't search for keywords they don't search for images, at least on my website, in a complicated way. They don't put long descriptive sentences. They use pretty simple keywords. And so I will put those descriptive words of that picture and embed them into the image, again, using Lightroom. So for an example, this owl here would have these keywords: owl, great horned owl, bird, wildlife. And if you notice, they're all separated by a comma because Lightroom, along with some other keywording programs, if you don't have the comma between them, they recognize it as a string of words and not individual words. But if you notice, great horned owl is one phrase that it'll recognize apart from owl or bird or wildlife. And so I'll add more keywords to that than just these, but that's kind of the basis of how I start. And I'll show you this when I get over to the demonstration part. Again, in the interest of being efficient, I'm going to show you a plugin that I use that I have found invaluable to really speeding up this process. And then step 6 is final filing. And when I do final filing, all these images need to live somewhere because now they're on my desktop. I've ran through all the process, and so I need to archive them somewhere on my external hard drives. And I use a subject-based filing system. And a lot of people have challenged me on this in the past and say, why don't you use dates? And the reason why I don't use dates is because the way I do pictures, like this great horned owl, it doesn't matter to me what date it was taken on. Now, if you're a portrait photographer or an event photographer or wedding photographer, I can see where dates would make sense. But for me, the dates don't make sense, but the subject does. So I use a subject-based filing system. And because the metadata is built into these images, and Lightroom lets you go through and sort according to metadata, that information is built in. So I've never seen it for my system, a need to be redundant and add dates again. So I base everything on subject. So if I call my wife from the field and I'm like, hey, can you find all the purple images for me of the great horned owl? Then all she has to do on the subject-based filing system is find the bird folder, find the owl folder, and dig into the great horned owl folder, and then sort for the purple images. And then instead of looking through a million images, all of a sudden she's used this filing system to hone it down to maybe the best 45 images. Again, we're looking for a needle in a haystack, but by using by using colors, the built-in metadata, the filing system I use, each successive step we're taking, we're making that haystack smaller and smaller and smaller, where in the end, you've still got to do a little bit of looking, but it's not looking through everything. So before I get to the demonstration, let me switch over to the questions and see if and answer any questions while all this is still fresh in our mind. So Christine asked, am I opening them in the folder or elsewhere for the 2 passes? Yeah, so the first pass, to clarify that, and I'll go back on this. So the first pass, let me go all the way back, is, just to reiterate, the first pass I use Photo Mechanic just to go through the pictures quick. And again, with Photo Mechanic, I'm looking at I'm just getting rid of the bad ones. And again, I use Photo Mechanic because it's a lot quicker. And then pass number 2, I import them into Lightroom from that central folder on my desktop. And then that's where I start picking the images that I'm going to do something with. And I don't understand a couple of those questions. So Christine, if you'll clarify some of those questions, I'll ask. Sam says you can incorporate unique data using variables in Photo Mechanic, which is why I like to rename or just ingest with Photo Mechanic. Yeah, that's a good point there, Sam. Allison asked, after step 2 and the second pass, where are the rest of the pictures you didn't pick to edit? They're still in place, and that's where I get to the end where I ultimately file them. So they're still there. It's just they're not the pictures that I'm going to go through and edit. And part of that's time saving. If I've got multiple pictures that look the same or similar, there's really no point. I can go back and edit them later on. There's really no point in the beginning for me to edit every single picture I've got. I'm just only editing the pics that I'm going to do something with immediately. Now, the pictures they'll be archived with later on, I can edit them. Later on, I can edit them. But in the beginning, I just the pictures I need to pick out right then is all I'll go through and edit. So let me get through this. Thank y'all for the questions, by the way. Okay. So on the demonstration, I'm just going to show you a couple of things. I'm not going to go really deep into the workflow and show you how this works. But on the demonstration, let me switch over. Again, keep the questions coming if you have any. Let me switch over here to a different window real fast. So you can see here's Photo Mechanic, and that's what it looks like. I can, like someone mentioned, you can ingest in Photo Mechanic, do all kinds of different variables. I generally don't tend to make it very complicated. I just try to keep it pretty straightforward, again, so I remember the steps. But really on Photo Mechanic, all I'm doing is I'm just going through image by image and I'm looking at it as the first step and see, do I like that picture? Do I not like this picture? See, this is an example of what I'm talking about earlier. I've got a lot of the pictures that look the same, and I'll keep them all. It's cheap insurance to keep them. And so I'll just go through, and if it's blatantly a bad picture in Photo Mechanic, I'll just give it a number 1, which is a 1-star label. Photo Mechanic, when I'm done, allows me to sort for just all my 1-starred photos, and I can delete those right off there before I import them into Lightroom after that. And so you can see, I mean, I can, about as fast as I can push the right button, I can go through these pictures quick, and Photo Mechanic won't hardly slow down at all. And so once I've kind of done my initial edit there, and let me shut this one down. And I bring these aren't the same images, but as I bring all the images into Lightroom, because again, on my left panel in Lightroom, I've got this folder that's called First Picks, or I said New Picks earlier, but it's called First Picks. And these are the pictures that are kind of the ones I'm going to work on. And so from here, all I'll do is I'll go through and I'll look for the pictures. I'll make the thumbnail kind of big, again, in the interest of just really trying to go through quick. I'll go through here and I'll hold down Command and just select multiple images that I think are the ones I want to work on. And so this is where I start making my picks. There's more javelinas. And so once I'm done there, all I do is, okay, these are my picks. These are the ones I want to work on. I hit the number 6. And when I hit 6, let me change that back to capture time. When I hit 6, it's going to give them a color label of red. So now, instead of looking through all my images, I can click here on the attribute menu, and I can tell it right here in the top, show me just the red images that I've picked. And then there's the ones I just picked. So to answer Allison's question from earlier, all the other images I didn't pick are still there. They're still in the folder. But now, because I'm clicking the ones that are just red, it's showing me these are the ones I've picked. I'm going to try to work on, and these are the ones I'm going to edit and actually do something with. And so these attribute sorting tool is really powerful for being able to go back and find where you're at. And again, using the color labels red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. If I want to see, okay, if I go to yellow and turn off red, these are some pictures for an industrial shoot I did not long ago. These are the pictures that have entered the next state. They're ready. They've been edited and they're ready for keywording. And then as I go to green, it goes to the additional states that we talked about. They've been keyworded, and then I go to blue, and these are the ones that show me the ones I've outputted to JPEGs. And so I can look, even though multiple pictures from multiple shoots, I can tell exactly using color labels where I'm at in the process. Now, what I may do is come back through here, and if there's some particular images I like, I can give them a 5-star rating then, and then I can say, then I can tell Lightroom, show me all the blue images that I've rated 5 stars or better, and then it'll reduce them down to that. Now, one thing you got to remember to do is when you're done sorting your images using these attributes, using the filters, you got to turn it off, because I know people who are new to Lightroom thinks their images are gone because you can't see them anymore. But more often than not, the filters are turned on and it's just letting you filter. So I'll use color labels again to tell me what state I'm in, what has been done to the images, and then I'll use the colors to tell me what state it's in, and then I'll make my picks using the stars. And I'd mentioned this earlier. I'm going to show you this. The reason I use colors, because as I'm scrolling through there, I can tell pretty quick which color the images are. But if you're scrolling through at a moderate pace, it's not always apparent which ones have the stars on them. So that's why I use colors to kind of tell me where I'm at in the process. It's just I can identify them quicker. Just gives me more ways to search and more intuitive ways to search than just using stars. But in the end, I'm using a combination of color labels and stars and keywords and metadata to help me find all these images. Okay, so I've gone through, I've edited all my pictures, I've done what I'm going to do to them, I've selected all my blue ones, and then when they're ready to finally file, before I file them yet, I will go and I'll select all of them, and I will just go up to photo, and then here in the set color label, I'll change them all to purple. And then once they've changed all to purple, that tells me they're ready to go to their final filing. So now they're purple. And so because I use a folder-based system, and before you think, wait a second, why don't you choose collections? I'll explain why I do it in a minute. So if you look over here, and this is a little bit hard to see because you may go back and watch the replay of this and see how I do this here. But like in the birds menu that I mentioned before, I've got a folder called birds, and these are all imported through Lightroom. And then I may go down to owls, for example. It's in the Raptors folder. I may go to Raptors and then find my owls, burrowing owls, for example, and then I can find those images just in that folder. And the reason why I use folders and not collections in Lightroom, because I can't remember when collections came into play for Lightroom, but my original system was using folders like this that I imported into the system. And early on, when I had a folder-based system that I was cataloging my pictures in, by the way, this folder-based system mimics what I had when I was doing slides, is at first I was using 2 competing programs to see which one I like better. I was using Lightroom and I was using Aperture. And that was a Mac product. and aperture is no longer around anymore. And so one thing I discovered early on is by using just the native, folder embedded in folder system that's native to all computers, it was going to future proof me, because if I had everything in collections and I decided to switch to like On One or some other kind of image management program, those collections may not be recognized somewhere else. Or if Lightroom decides to go out of business tomorrow, those collections may not be recognized by another software program. But that native filing system, the folder embedded in another folder, embedded in another folder, is recognized by all these systems. So that's why instead of using collections, I use collections, but for different reasons. But instead of using them to find my files and file my files, ultimately, I just use the folder-based system. Again, that all goes back to when I originally created this system, and it's been portable over time. And even if collections decide to go away tomorrow, this system will still work, whether I'm using Lightroom, On One, the new photo mechanic that they just came out with, or any other image management software. It'll still work in all of those. So that's why I use the filing system instead of folders. And one more thing I didn't show you yet, and I meant to, was if we go back here to show you a shortcut. If I decide that now I've already downloaded these folder pictures, I've made my pics, the ones I'm going to edit, and then the next step I'm going to do is rename them. Then I can just do Command A in Mac. I think it's Control A in PC, and then select all the pictures at once. And in the library folder in the library menu, click Library and go down to where it says Rename Photos. F2 is the shortcut. And then I've just got a custom name put in there where I put in the name and then I put in the starting number of the files and hit OK. And it'll batch rename everything at one time for me. So I don't have to just sit there and go back and rename every file at once. All right. So, and another thing I haven't talked about yet is keywording, because that's going to be a little bit more of a discussion. I see questions coming in and I appreciate those. But when I get to the keywording part, let me just find a good set of pictures I'll keyword. And this is another one of those things that just saves time. Let's do these picas. I think these guys are cool. These are from Yellowstone. So when I get ready to do the keywording step, again, I've downloaded my pictures into a central folder. I have got rid of all the bad ones. I've made my picks of which ones I want to edit. And then the next thing then I rename them after that. And then I start the process of keyword, or I've done my color corrections. Then I'm going to start the process of keywording these pictures. And the way that works is when I keyword used to, and I need to move some of these windows around. I used to, I'll just show you here. I used to sit there and just try to think of, okay, what's all can I put about this image? I can put pica, I can put Yellowstone, I can put rocks, and I'd sit there and try to think of all the keywords I can put in this image. And in addition, I might do some, I'm not the best typer in the world, so I may mistype and not be accurate in my typing. And so I found this plugin that really works wonders and has sped up this process so much. So I can select a range of images, all these like images, like these picas, for example. So I selected 11 images right then. If you notice here on the right in the keyword window that there's no keywords in there. And I found this little dandy plugin. Now, until AI becomes really good and it can identify everything in your images, this is the way we've got to do it. But on the plugins, I found this plugin called My Keyworder for Lightroom. And it's My Keyworder, MyKeyworder, My Keyworder for Lightroom. Again, I don't know the guy that invented this, but whoever did, he did a great job. And it's free to download. All he asks you for is just a donation of whatever you feel led to do. And so I haven't donated lately, but when I open this, you'll see it pop up asking for a donation, and I'll go back to him and donate later, because I try to donate to him multiple times a year, because this one thing has saved me a ton of time. But if we open this My Keyworder for Lightroom, you can see my Safari's bouncing because it's trying to open that donation window. Give that just a second to open up. Let me try that again. I might not hit it good. So I'm going to tag these images as a batch. Okay, there we go. And it brings up this window. And so I've got the picture I'm going to keyword here. And I always select like images to do this that are going to have the same keywords applied to it. And so I may type in one keyword, pica. And I suspect the way this works is it mines its whole database. And I'm going to hit search keywords. It'll mine its whole database and look for like keywords. So you can see they're appearing there. So now all I've got to do is go through and pick out the keywords. Let me close that window. Pick out the keywords that I think apply to this particular picture. So I've got pica, nature, animal, mammal, American pica, rock, alpine, mountain, Rocky Mountains, whatever I think apply. I can pick the keywords I want. And then I hit this right arrow right here and it puts them in this selected keywords box. And then once I'm done there, I just click save keywords to photos and it'll do its magic in the background. And then when it's done, we can look back over here and then we can see that we can look over here. Oops. Too much is going on here. Yeah, I want to close that. Anyway, we can look over here and now in all these pictures I just selected, it applied these keywords to all those pictures. And so by using that plugin, it has just really sped up the keywording process a lot. And so again, by using color labels, keywords, the metadata built into pictures, and then the folder system, if I were to look for a picture today and I was to say, okay, I want to find a picture of, I would say a gobbling turkey. I can go in here to my bird folder. And then since that's classified as a game bird, I'll go here and I'll click on my turkey folder. I've got 13,521 images in that folder. And if I can say, show me all the pictures taken in, let that load up. I can tell Lightroom to show me all the pictures taken in 2016 with a 500 millimeter lens. It'll show me just those. I can say, show me all the pictures taken in 2016 with a 500 millimeter lens that I labeled purple. It'll show me all of those. And so by using these tools and using the, so I can say, I'm going to show all dates, show me everything I shot with a, doesn't matter the camera, with a 500 millimeter lens, with the 1.4 extender attached. And all of a sudden it says, okay, here's 3,950 images. Then I can say, show me all the pictures in purple. And then now, instead of having all those pictures, instead of looking at 3,957 pictures, I can show me all the purple ones taken with that lens combo. And it says, okay, here's 99 of them right here. So instead of having to look through all these pictures to look for something specific, I can narrow it down to just those. I can even use text if I wanted to. And I can say, okay, show me all the pictures of like a tom, just a male turkey that fits all those criteria. Oops. I don't know whether it's searching or I didn't look or I didn't type it in good. But anyway, I can use those keywords to be able to find those images like that. So there's all kinds of different ways that Lightroom allows you to search. And I know Lightroom's not necessarily the only way of doing this. There's other tools to do it. Lightroom is, I recognize it's kind of the standard. It's common what a lot of people use, and it's just what I use. So that's why I do it like I do. So let me switch back over to my presentation after that short demonstration of how I do things. Really, the important thing to take away from this is whether my process works for you or not, or my process is just a good starting point for you. The point is develop a process and develop a workflow that works for you. One way is not necessarily better than the other. I built my way just on repeatability because it's easy for me to remember. And I've also built my way based on efficiency. I'm just trying to shave time off the process because I recognize the longer something takes, the longer a task takes that you really don't want to do in the first place, the more unwilling you are to do it. So I've just tried to make this pretty simple. And I can usually go through my images pretty quick. Like the 40,000 I mentioned when I went to the African continent last summer, I can typically go through those working on them a couple hours a night. It usually takes me about a week to go through that many pictures, just using the same system. And when I say going through that many, that's calling out the bad, selecting the ones I want to keep, doing my edits, because again, I don't edit every single picture I take, keywording those pictures, applying the color labels through the process, and then be able to output them on the end. I usually go through them that quick. It just doesn't take any time at all. So let's let me look at the questions here. So how do you handle when you go somewhere like Yellowstone? This is Steve's question, and have multiple animals you shoot. How do you deal with the mass import and then get them individual folders per animal? That's a good question, Steve. So what you can do then, and let me switch back to Lightroom. What I'll do then is, let's say, for example, these elk pictures here. I'll just go through and select just these elk pictures. And then I can use those same tools. I can, since I've already keyworded them out of this folder, which I haven't keyworded this, I can just say, show me all the elk pictures. Lightroom will drill it down and just show me the elk pictures. Then all I've got to do is select all of those, and then I can drag those pictures over here to the appropriate folder that they need to be in. And all of this moving gets done in Lightroom, by the way, so Lightroom can keep track of where it's moving these images to. If you do this outside of Lightroom, Lightroom can't keep track of them, and you'll always run into issues. So once you select all of those pictures, all the same type of animals, then it's just as easy again. So I've got these in a mammals folder, and I can go over here from mammals and find elk. And then I can take all those elk pictures, and you can see when I grab them, it makes like a stack of images, and I can grab that whole stack and just drop them into that folder. And then it will move all those pictures over there for me in bulk. And this is kind of a quirky thing. Follow me here. I have noticed when you're moving pictures, if you're done with the edits and you're ready to do the final filing on all your pictures, Lightroom works better. It doesn't work better. It frees it up if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the stack, and then you start moving them from the bottom and go up from there. And the reason why is as you move up, those pictures are moving off the bottom of the stack, and it doesn't change what the picture you're looking at. If you do them from the top of the stack, I found that it's trying to move those pictures. And as you scroll down trying to select more pictures to move, it always bumps it back to the top every time. So if you drag them from the bottom up, you don't get those interruptions that you do another way. So I hope that answers your question, Steve. Let's see. So Dana asked, so does this folder system mirror the folder system on your hard drive? Exactly. So if you look over here on the left, Dana, I build the folder system initially I built it on my computer, and then in Lightroom, where under the folders tab, you can expand it, and you've got a plus and minus there. And so you can, in the plus, you can create a new folder and then add a folder or a subfolder. I always add the folders, and then you can look for that folder on your hard drive and import that same structure into Lightroom. And the benefit of that is it imports the same structure into Lightroom, and then it gives you an idea how many pictures are in each folder. And so as your image collection grows, you can look at all those pictures that you have in there. And so, but that's why I like that folder system instead of using collections. Sam says AI on one photo keyword AI looks interesting, but I've not tried it yet. Yeah, I've tried it a little bit, but it's been a while back, Sam. But I did notice too that it's good on some images, but some images it's not good. So in the interest of just keyword integrity, I still do it myself, but my keyworder for Lightroom plugin again saves me a ton of time. And remember the example I showed you when I said 4 seconds per image, on average, it's probably more than that when you take into account all these steps. You may be saving 10 seconds per image if you shoot a lot of images per year. And if you do that, I mean, 111 hours, just saving 4 seconds per image, just shaving that time off of it. 111 hours, that's almost 3 work weeks a year, 40-hour work weeks a year from not having to manage these images. If you just figure out ways to shave time off that. And that's astounding, because I'd rather spend that 3 weeks out taking pictures of other stuff if I can figure out ways to streamline this process. And that's what I'm trying to show you here. David asked, when did you copy the pictures from the first pics to the individual folders? David, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that. I'm sorry. I do that at the very end. So after I've done my edit pics and editing and renaming everything, and I've keyworded them and I've changed the color to purple, at that point I'll start moving them into I call my hard drive the old folks home, because that's where these images go to live out their final days and to get archived. And so the very last step I do, I move them from that main folder that I imported them to. I'm taking them out of the warehouse, so to speak, and I'm putting them out on the shelves, which the shelves are represented by the folders and on my hard drives that I archive my pictures to, these external hard drives that are connected. So I hope that answers your question. Dana says, I like your subject file system, but what do you say about a particular bird taken in different locations? I add it to the keyword. A lot of times for me, Dana, the location really doesn't matter so much, because again, and this is the way my business is structured, because a lot of times a magazine will say, we just need a picture of a feral hog. It doesn't matter that it's taken in Texas. It may need to kind of look like Texas, but it doesn't matter where it's taken. And so locations don't matter much to me. But if locations do matter, then I can just add that information into the keyword and be able to search for that later to be able to differentiate from it. And then Sam says, thanks for sharing today, Russell. Appreciate that, Sam. I would strongly agree with organizing by subject organization by date is just a mess unless you have a perfect memory. And that's why I said what I did, Sam, because I do not have a perfect memory. I'm looking at these pictures of these feral pigs with their babies I took last week, and I'm sitting there thinking, I can't remember what the number one, I can't remember what the date was. Number two, I can't remember what day of the week it was. I know it was late in the week, but that's how bad my memory fails me. But really, the dates aren't important to me, because again, I can look. If you click on that picture and look over here on the right, I took that picture on November 10th at 4:13 p.m. So that information is already given to me. And so that's why I don't recreate it in my filing system, because I can always go back and sort through that thing. So I'm glad we agree on that. Scott Kelby, with a slightly different system, advocates the same idea and got me starting from high level topics, landscape, aviation, wildlife. Yeah, that's what I do. And then I use collections with Scott's system. Yeah, and the collections aren't a bad way to go. And I don't mean to demean the collections. My point on why I don't use collections is because I've tried on one, and I think in a lot of ways it may be a better product than Lightroom. I'm not convinced yet, because I'm not really ready to move. But I'm not going to say Lightroom's forever going to be the standard. And if tomorrow, if Russell Graves creates Hillbilly Images as an image management platform, and I think that's a better solution, I can transport this whole folder system over to that system without worrying about any steps. I can transport it instantly without having to worry about how it's going to read collections or if it's going to read collections. And that's why I use the folder system instead. You also say you're a huge Photo Mechanic fan for speed. Yeah, it is. That Photo Mechanic, and again, in the interest of saving time. Now, if you're only going through a few thousand images a year, it might not make that much difference. But for me, when you're going through just the bulk of images, and again, I spent 3 weeks in Africa, came back with 40,000 plus images, just the ability to go through those as quick as I humanly could and select through them. It's just one of those things that shaves time off the process over time, and really helps me get back to doing what I want to do. But for me, ultimately, and I see some more questions coming in, I'll get to those, but I got to relate this little story to you. But for me, really, the proof in the pudding is, and I don't say this as a negative about my wife, but my wife she is my sort of part-time assistant, because she's got her own things she's got to do too, like being a mother, and we've got another business on the side that she handles most of that. But if I call her from the road, because she virtually knows nothing about the way I file my images, but and she knows probably even less about some of the specific animals I may photograph. But if I called her from the road and asked her and just talked to her over the phone and said, can you go through my archives and find me a picture of a hooded merganser, because you can look here, here, and here, and then click a couple of buttons and find it. She can find any image in my archive within a minute or two. It just takes her no time. And she doesn't know about looking for it, but she knows because of the simple system I've created, I can walk her through the process and she can find any image that I need to find. And to me, that's the best testament that you can plug someone in who knows nothing about your system, and then they can still find what you're looking for within that system. To me, that's the mark of a good system when you can do that, because it's repeatable and it's simple to understand, and it's easy for you to remember that you can walk someone else through it. Dana says, that's a fantastic presentation. Thanks so much for sharing your system. Don't go away yet. I got a couple things I want to share with everybody. And then Steve says, how can you transport when using color labels which are not standard like stars? And I'm not sure what you mean by that, Steve. So if you'll clarify that, I'll be happy to answer it. So let me switch back to, let me share a couple more things with you, because I know we're about an hour into this now, and the time flies when we do this stuff. But this is a topic I'm really passionate about. If I'm really organized about anything, it's this right here. And I really like being organized and all this stuff, because it helps me out in the end if I can find my images. And so, what questions do you have for me? Hey, I know I went through a lot today, and I know B&H will be posting this on their YouTube channel that you can go back and watch it. But if I didn't make something clear, feel free to stay in touch with me. There's my email address, russell@russellgraves.com. Sometimes it may take me a day or two to get back with you, but I always get back with anyone who takes the time to email me, and I'm always happy to help. And then if you want to learn about anything else I've got coming up as far as getting direct access to my YouTube channel, watching more of these type of webinars, and just interested in the educational stuff I do, I've got a secondary website called hackberryfarmtexas.com, and there you can go sign up for my newsletter if you want to get it. I don't spam you too much. You get 2 or 3 emails a month from me is all you get, and but it'll tell you about not only what I've got going on here locally, educationally, but all my travel trips as well. So if you feel led, go ahead and sign up for that, and I sure appreciate that. But other than that, if I don't have any other, I got another question coming in. Steve Rubin says, migrate from one system to another. Well, that's when the color labels come into an issue on that, Steve. And so that would take, it could take, and I don't really know how these systems look at it, but it could take an additional step when you're trying to migrate from one system to another. I'd have to dive into that to give you a more accurate response. And Christine comes back. Can you clarify one step? You said keyworded in Lightroom label green, but you also have a specific step for keywording in step 5. I think what you mean is that my colors are off, and Christine, I'd have to go back and look at that, and they may be off. But really the point is don't get hung up on the colors, but get hung up on the fact that every time a state changes on an image, every time you do something different to an image in the step, change it to a different color, or you could even do the stars. I like colors. But change it to a different color or a different star rating. And the reason for that is so you can go back and understand where in the process that you left off. That's the whole purpose of those color labels. I just do them in order 6, 7, 8, 9. It's easier for me to remember. But if it's easier for you to go from green to red to blue to yellow to purple, then whatever is easiest for you. I think the important point is just laying out these steps that I do that will help you understand what you can do to develop your workflow that's specific to you and help you manage those mountain of images and solve that problem that we all started out with. So, Derek, I think that's the last question.
Yeah, I don't know if we got, because we had a lot of stuff on filtering and color labels. There was one that was came in on YouTube from Bossy asking, can you filter on Lightroom using just color labels?
You can. Let me go back to that real quick. I didn't see those, and I appreciate you bringing those up. So, hang on. Am I sharing the right screen? What screen do you see on your end?
I see
Okay,
Lightroom.
it's Lightroom. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So to answer that question, You can. So if you're in the library module, I've got to move this stuff around so I can see. This Zoom stuff gets in the way, Derek.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're in the library module and you click on this library filter, you can see it gives you 4 choices: text, attribute, metadata, or none. Right now I've got none turned on. But if I wanted to do attribute, all of a sudden it brings up all these colors I can filter by. And so I can say, just show me the red pictures. And then all of a sudden there they are. Just the pictures I've got labeled red. Or I can say, show me the red and yellow ones. It'll show you that. So I can do any combination of these. I can say, just show me the yellow ones if I want to. So I turn off the red, click on the yellows. And again, the whole purpose of the color labels is just for me to mentally track where I'm at in the process without, see, Lightroom will tell you, if you look at these little bitty icons on the bottom, it'll, in the corner of each image, it'll tell you that I've done some edits to this image. And then the next one over, it looks like a little pin. It'll tell you if I've applied keywords to those images. But that requires you to slow down and look. Using the color labels, I can just go back instantly and just sort them really quick just to be able to show me where I'm at in the process. And again, it's like, I keep bringing this up over and over again for fear of sounding redundant, but really I'm looking for those ways and using those tools I have at my disposal that I can shave time off that process. And that it's like, look, I don't consider myself an Olympic athlete, but if you start looking at the training regimens of Olympic athletes, they're not looking to try to shave 10 seconds off their time. They're looking to try to save hundreds of seconds off their time, whether they're running or bicycling or swimming or whatever. And so the whole point in this is we're looking for ways to save a lot of time. But once you get to that point, what are some strategies we can use, like the plugin for the keywording, that you can bulk keyword images and let someone else do the thinking in terms of keywords that you want to use, where all you have to do is identify the proper keywords, apply them, and then move on to the next ones. It's just looking for those ways to shave a little bit of time off each image, which, by the way, if you were looking at the very first when I showed the calculator example, just a few seconds per image adds up to a lot of time when you're talking about having a lot of images to sort through.
Perfect, Russell. Ton of information here.
Yeah. Was there any other questions?
Nothing that I see. I think you covered it all. I want to send a huge thank you to you. This went above and beyond. I'm gonna have to rewatch this.
Yeah,
because there's too much information for me to just absorb on the fly. So it's just a great reason why you can always revisit our content on YouTube and Vimeo. So make sure you guys are checking those out. If you are on Vimeo, just check out vimeo.com/BH Event Space. And if you go on YouTube and look up B&H Event Space on there, you can find this and all of our other archived content on there. Russ, I want to send a huge thank you to you once again for rejoining us and all your expertise on this subject. And to all of our viewers out there, thank you as well. That's all we got in the books for you today. Another rendition of the B&H Virtual Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Russell.